Well, good evening, everyone, and welcome to Mental Health Monday here at Cross Lutheran Church. If you are joining us online, my name is John Sutherland, and I have the great honor and privilege of being pastor of this wonderful faith community. And we are having these mental health events once a month on Mondays, so please keep posted to Facebook to see if the topic is relevant to you. Many, many years ago, when I was a young pastor, I met a very, very young funeral director by the name of Mike O'Connell. He was working with his late dad and his late brother at a funeral we had at our Saviors in Beldenville, and I was very, very impressed with the professionalism of Mike at that time. Hopefully that will remain true tonight, but I'm sure it will. But anyway, O'Connell Funeral Homes and cremation services have been part of Western Wisconsin's history for a long, long time, and they do a spectacular job, and we're very, very grateful for their ministries to the community. Mike, as you might know, lives in Baldwin, Wisconsin, and the most important thing you have to know is he's okay because he's a Packer fan and also a Twins fan. And right away, that makes everything else forgivable. He has been president of the Baldwin-Woodville Area Chamber of Commerce and the Baldwin-Woodville Community Foundation, and he's served as a board member of the St. Croix Resource Center. He is a funeral director. He went to University of Minnesota, graduating with a BS in mortuary science. He also attended UW River Falls, and he's been in the business since 1988, just a young pup then, weren't you? And he continues in that ministry. I do call it a ministry because if any of us have been in the role of being a survivor or going through the grieving process, we know what an incredible ministry funeral directors have to offer to us. So without hesitation, I asked him tonight to be our keynote speaker on a time of grief and pandemic, and he can do that or whatever else he wants us to do. But anyway, without further ado, I will turn it over to my friend Mike O'Connell.
Thank you, Leroy. Well, welcome everybody to this event, and Pastor Sutherland, thank you so much for doing this. We've done some Facebook Lives here not too long ago that talked about grief and how it right now is just, it's kind of crippling all of us. And so I wanted to talk about that because I love the opportunity when somebody gives me a chance and a microphone and one of these cool things. Ron, does this look really cool back there on me? Oh, thank you. I know, right? I'm going to keep one of these. Yeah, for you, those of you from Cross Lutheran, I'm sorry that you have to deal with pastors' sermons, so you're already an expert in grief. So this should be relatively easy for you. But I did want to start out by going over some basic things. What is grief? Anybody here want to help answer that? Chaos. It's an emotional response to a loss. And that loss is something that might be a human, might be something we liked. It's something that we've built a bond with. And so we usually associate grief with death, but it doesn't have to be. There's so much loss, and that's why I wanted to talk about this, because loss to a death is just one part of the element of grief in general and mourning. So let's talk a little bit about that. So grief, emotional response to something we've lost. And then what is mourning? Well, mourning is our outward response to that grief. In today's world, we have diminished our grief response so much that, you go to the grocery store. If you ever want to test somebody, just tell them when they say, "How you doing?" Say, "Horrible." And they'll say, "Good." Because we don't want to hear it. And so we need to slow it down. We need to help each other. We need to listen. And so again, thank you for this opportunity. So what I wanted to start doing a little bit is we're going to throw it out there and we're going to write some things down that grief is. Okay? So all the crowd here, I want you to yell out some responses or some emotions that we're going to feel in COVID right now. Good. What was it? Anger. Great one, great one, great one. So anger, let's talk about that. We've got anger all over the board. Has anybody watched politics lately? It has segregated us. It has divided us. And we're just angry. This is about 2 months ago now, I was in the parking lot of Arby's. And you go around the corner and there was 3 cars ahead of me, and I was getting my wallet out, and I dropped my credit card, and so I went down to pick it up, and the horn blew. And I'm like, what the heck? So I look back, and this guy is cussing me out because the 2 cars ahead of me went forward, and I didn't move. I couldn't believe it. That's where we're at today. We're just so angry. We're angry because we don't know what to do. Right? Okay. Good one. How about another one? I was wondering if anybody would say that. Loneliness. Let's talk about that. Loneliness. Do we know anybody that's lonely out there? Do you have to have a loss to be lonely? No. You could be married. You could have that picket fence in your yard, but you could still be lonely. Lonely, just you're looking for people, and in that idea, what has COVID done? It stopped us from doing that, right? We can't do hugs. I've often said, and Faye knows my mom, that this would have killed her because she can't hug people. That's one of our basic needs, right? We want to be nurtured, we want to be loved, we want to be held. And COVID has stopped that because it's not healthy, it's not safe. So loneliness, perfect. All right, let's keep them coming. What else we got out there, Pastor?
I would say, it's weird with the snow. That I keep on looking at the times I used to be, and just seeing the past. That makes sense.
What do you think emotion goes with that? So, for those of you that couldn't hear, Pastor is saying of the past, and we live in the past. If you don't believe that, Christmas. What do we love to hear? Christmas music, right? Chestnuts roasting on an open fire. We have candles on the Christmas trees. That we all regress back to the old days because that makes us feel good. So we've lost that during COVID. So what emotion would that be? Okay? What else we got? Ooh. Instability. Ron back there, can you hear me? What if anybody on Facebook, can they text in something? If anybody does, you yell it. What else we got? Fear? Ooh, man. How about that gets big letters? Fear. Anybody here not fearful right now? What's there to be fearful about? Delta? Is it coming back again? Are the markets going to crash? What's going to happen with Afghanistan? Is Pastor's sermons going to go long again? I mean, all those things we worry about, right, Pastor? Yeah. I'll throw one in. Guilt? How do we have guilt during this time? Well, if you can't see your grandkids, if you can't go to church, geez, I feel bad I'm not going to church. All these things that's guilt. That's guilt. That's a really good one. Okay, overwhelmed. I'm just going to start writing some too. Resentment. Ooh, nice one by Leroy. Insecurity. How about that? What do you think? Insecure about what? Life. Your finances. So for those of you out there who may not hear that, he's talking about you don't have that rock to cling to that's going to help you make decisions. It's going to help you do all that. There's insecurity and there's uncertainty. I heard that one too. I hear Ron in the back. Did you say loss? Okay. Well, that is part of the whole grief thing. You're right. Absolutely. So the idea that someone's lost their job that they've had for 35 years. I think they've got a lot of these going on. They've got fear, they've got insecurity, instability, they're sad, they're mad, they're angry, they're overwhelmed, they're resentful. Yeah. How about some things that we always think with loss, they have to be sad or angry or things like that, but what are some other ones that we could be feeling right now?
Just, this might encompass everything, but just the loss of daily routine, just what you normally do, it's just the whole cart turned upside down.
Loss of routine. Loss. Yeah, that's what I'm getting at. That's what I was looking for. So the appreciation of what was. And so although we have some very intense anger, sadness, fear, loneliness, there's also, like you say, some of the positives. So the gratitude. Relief. What if somebody's died and they've been struggling and you're relieved? But at the same time, you're lonely, you're fearful, you're guilt, you're mad. You felt them all, right? Yeah. What's that? Great memories. Okay. So I wanted to go over these for a couple of reasons. Is there any more? I mean, there's more out there. If you can't go to your grandson's baseball game, what are you going to feel? Regret. There's a good one. Okay. Pastor, if you can't have a full house here, what do you feel? Mm-hmm. I heard one in the crowd, which was a really good one. Failure. So I wanted to talk about these because these are life, right? It's not because of a death. Maybe for some people it has. But these are losses we're feeling every day. And so I think that's why, and I can't speak for you, Pastor, but I think that's why you wanted to draw attention to this, because every one of us has loss every single day. Anybody lose their keys today? Can't find your phone? Can't remember why you opened the fridge door? right? Anybody get new medication the last month or two? So you've lost your health? Another one, right? You feel like you're getting old? I mean, my dad hated that. And so all of these things are barraging us every day from, where's my damn keys? Or, come on, we got to get going. We're going to be late. And all of these individual losses then start to play together. And so, all of these great things they're part of our everyday lives. Now, we like predictability. That's what we like. We like to know how the end is going to turn out. Anybody here not have ever watched a movie and you paused it for a second to find out how much is left in that movie? Okay, because we like to know what to expect. We want to manage our expectations. And COVID's not letting us, right? All of these emotions now are coming together. And I always, although I probably didn't pay much attention in chemistry in school, I did learn a couple things. So, anger. I can't go to my son's baseball game. By itself, you know what? You'll figure it out. You're overwhelmed. Your resentment. Maybe pastor's got some resentment because you can't come to church. And then he's got some fear because if you don't come to church, well, that's going to affect the budget. And then what are we going to do if that's what we do? Our mind starts to run. We've lost our freedom. We've lost our routine. That's what COVID's done to us. So, by themselves, they're manageable, right? They're manageable. You've got A here, you've got B, you've got C, and you've got D. But what is E? What is E? I always talk about myself because then I can pick on myself and nobody can, say I'm lying or anything. I remember that I was all those feelings after my brother was killed. And I thought it was you that was being the pain in the you-know-what, because I was angry. And I remember one day watching the TV, and maybe some of you have heard this, and the weatherman said it was going to be 40, and it got to 38. And I yelled at the TV at the top of my voice. And I'm like, oh my God, it is me. It is me. It was overwhelmed. It was everything. See, the problem is grief doesn't care who you are. It doesn't care your financial ability. It doesn't care if you're male or female or your upbringing, if you're a good front row Christian or if you're the one in the back that comes on Christmas and Easter. It doesn't care. It'll pick on all of us. And nobody is faster than the speed of hurt. So the problem is we can't put it into this package. Remember, we like the expectations and we like to know them. If I take fruit punch right here and becomes pastor's favorite friend because I've poured fruit punch right here in the front, you can see the damage. It's very tangible, right? When we don't grieve right, it's not tangible. You yell at the weatherman. You take it out on the one that you live with, the one that you love the most. Their habits or whatever, they just drive you insane. So people say they grow apart. You don't grow apart, you just don't tell how you're feeling. And that's what grief does to us. It sneaks up and it bites us in the can. And so I like to bring this up because most people think of loss and mourning and as this overwhelming, well, at least you had time to say goodbye because he was sick for a while. Or, well, at least, your wife died right away. And so you didn't have to go through that long period to say goodbye. It's just easier. Death is death. Loss is loss. And life is where we're at right now. So, not ready for that quite yet, Pastor, so you're okay. Let's talk a little bit about what we can do for those that are going through a tough period. There was 3 words, and I'm going to look them up again here because I thought they were great. It was just 3 words: contact, listen, and bless. So if you know of anybody in your congregation, are you going to sit on your hands, or are you going to do something about it? You all know somebody that's lonely, that's going through all this stuff here. I guarantee you all know somebody. And maybe you went to the funeral because that was, heck, maybe that was even the right thing to do at the time, and even I went to the funeral, you know. Look at me. I got a pat on the back for doing that. The tough work is 2 weeks, 2 months, 2 years later, when they're lonely, they're mad, they're sad, and they need somebody to talk to. That's when we want to be good Christians. We want to reach out, love thy neighbor, right? So, again, this chemistry equation is we've got all of these great emotions, and they were anger, resentment, lonely, guilt, failure, resentment, overwhelmed. Which ones am I missing? And by themselves, they're dealable. But when you take them all together and we have life, that's grief. That's grief right here. Can't tell anymore. They're all blended together in a nice, colorful way. That's grief. It doesn't come packaged. The problem is, as a society, we want to grieve through it. We want to be in stages. Kubler-Ross did that book on stages several years ago, and it was great because that's what we knew then, and she was talking about the living. But I'm not a big fan of stages, and I'm certainly not a fan of closure because, again, we want to expect our expectations. We want to know what to know. And so that's why, well, am I in the anger stage? Or am I in the resentment? Or am I in the bargaining? Or am I in the acceptance? That puts us up to failure. You can have all this into one. You can be happy at one point and crying the next. Am I right? And so that's what I kind of want to make sure that we get across is everybody in their normal day lives has overwhelming loss and grief. And so what do? Those words. You connect. Let's call somebody. We all know someone that's had someone die in the last year or two. And if you don't, I know Pastor can tell you who they are. And then contact them and then listen. Just listen. The dear Lord put 2 ears and 1 mouth on your head for a reason. Just shut up and listen. Ask Him, though, what is it like? What was it like when the doctor told you you had 3 months? Or what was it like when they said it was COVID and the respirators weren't working and the doctor said there's not much more we can do? What was it like? Ask the questions. All they want to do is talk about it. Are they tough? Yes. What part isn't tough in a death or in a big loss in life? So just listen. Ask questions, though. And be there because you want to be there, not because you were told to be there. And then bless them. What is blessing them? It's saying, I don't know what you're going through, but I'm going to come by next Thursday, or I'm going to call you tomorrow night, and if you don't answer it, I know you don't want to talk. I'll call you at 7 o'clock. If you answer it, great. If you don't, I understand. It's not about you. It's about them. You can't put your timetables on them. Some days are good, some days aren't. But just bless them. Maybe they need something to run some errands. Maybe they need groceries. Maybe a phone call to your favorite florist to bring them just a little thing to say, I'm thinking of you. But let them know they're not alone. Let them know that you're going to share their grief. That's what funerals are. That's what funerals are. That's what obituaries are. Obituaries are a call for help. Hey, I need help. We're going to be here at Cross Lutheran on Monday at 11 o'clock. And you can gather an hour before or the night before, but we want your presence because we need this. We can't do this without you. That's what an obituary is. So again, for those of you watching or here, what are you going to do about it? It's the golden rule. So I encourage anyone to reach out to someone that you know could use a little extra help. Every one of us, like I said, has normal stuff going on, but think of the millions of people that deal with anxiety, drinking or drugs, all these other things that now make this period even worse. People go to their doctors and the doctor gives them a prescription. You're only masking it, so try to talk about it, try to get it out, write journals. Journals are great because you're telling yourself, we think about all this stuff, but when you put it on paper and you read it, now you're bringing other senses in, and that's when your body starts to go, okay, hey, I'm starting to get a grip on this, and you're going through that acceptance. Because now you're seeing it, and you're writing it, and you're hearing it, especially when you read it out loud. Pastor, is there any questions that you might have that you'd like to have me address? Or I'm not a counselor by any stretch. I've been told I'm good at listening. And so if there's something you want me to specifically kind of address, I'd love to.
Funerals have been different than they normally were before, and I'm just wondering how that's affecting our grieving, process as well. Not that it can be processed. I'm very glad you said what you said about Kubler-Ross, because I've never thought there was a stage or stages at all either. It's just all chaos at once.
Mm-hmm.
But what have you heard about how people, how loneliness factors even more compelling now in this time of distancing?
So the question, I don't know if Ron, if you could hear him in the back through Facebook, but the question is how has grief been affected or funerals been affected through the COVID process? And it's profound. When it first came out, be honest, as a profession, we didn't know. We were just like everybody else going, okay, we had suits. And boy, we were dressed up to the hilt, and now most funeral directors would go with just a pair of gloves. Because we realize how it's transmitted now. It's by talking to people. So the dead body isn't talking anymore. It's not breathing. And so we can minimize that contact and then be smart. But what was really frustrating in the beginning is to say you could, when they had rule of what we call nines, you could have 9 per room and pick and choose your 9. We weren't policing, so if 10 people came, so be it, I guess. But it was frustrating because we had a young lady die with little kids, and they wanted to celebrate her life, and they couldn't. The church wasn't willing to bend the rules. At that time, everybody was scared of that, not knowing, and this was when it started, and there wasn't a high transmission rate even here, but it was the fear of it. And so I just remember going home in tears a little bit because this family was so disappointed that they couldn't say goodbye to their wife, and she was 39. And yet when I was going home, I looked, and I saw people going in and out of the liquor store, and Target was full. And I just didn't understand that. So talk about anger. I was angry because I felt handcuffed, that I couldn't help this family like they needed it. Because I truly believe what we do in this profession. And yes, Pastor, it is a ministry that we walk with you because we do it hand in hand. When there's a funeral, it's not like Pastor shows up or we show up. We're behind the scenes navigating and working together to bring this space for healing, this protected space. And when you can't do that, you feel inadequate. Another one of those things we didn't bring up. So that happened for many months, and then I think we all felt that kind of jubilation that was taken out of context, I think, when they said masks aren't necessary for people, certain people, and then nobody wore a mask. And so thought maybe we're over it, and now we're kind of going back into that phase maybe where people are not so sure if they should be at gatherings or if they should wear masks. And talking about loss and grief, if you've worn a mask and you went somewhere, you felt weird because people were looking at you like you had a mask on and you're just trying to be safe. That's what's sad to me, in one of the biggest losses that COVID's brought us isn't the stuff we talked about, it's how we're treating each other. It's become political, and what happened to respecting each other and saying, I might disagree with you or I might agree with you, but I respect you. So that seems to have gotten really taken in a different way than I don't think that's healthy. And I think partially it's because, again, we get back to that not knowing, and when we don't know, we act out like I did, and that's what people are doing. They're getting angry because we want to go back to that routine of watching the Packers without any problems, going to a game or whatever. We want that back. That was our little safety and security net. Some of the most sad things that was brought to us would be is you'd have someone dying on hospice in a hospital, and their family couldn't spend time with them because they weren't allowed in there. That's horrible. That's disenfranchised grief. That's complicated grief. That's, good Lord, grief. When you can't be with your loved one that you've been married for over 50, 60 years, and you can't be with them, oh my Lord, I don't know if you could stop me. And then at the same time, for some people, I think they died without even knowing it because they hadn't seen their kids for a year and a half, and they were scared. And so they burrowed down into their basement or their home, never coming out and never having that nurturing relationship, that physical contact with our loved ones. That's torture. And that's what's been happening. So yeah, nobody wants to wear masks. Nobody wants this anymore. Hopefully we can move past this and heal, and because it's right now it's crippling us. And what we went through, I think it's fearful for others to think that we're going to maybe have to go through some sort of that again. Does that answer the question a little bit?
A little bit, yeah.
Okay.
Sort of related to that, not pandemic specific at all, but just I was curious as to when we became so afraid of mourning and grief. Because I'm old enough to remember when my grandmothers wore black funerals, and everyone understood, okay, there's been a death in the family. And we also have some very, very good Jewish friends who, on the anniversary, they said a Kaddish and official end to mourning period. But all throughout the year, whenever they go to the temple, they have prayers offered for them in recognition of their grief. And yet, it seems as a whole society, we've lost the respect for mourning. And I was just wondering how that happened or when that happened, if you have any idea.
Ron, did you catch that, or should I? A little bit. Okay, so the question would be is, where did we lose along the way the respect for mourning, the respect for the whole process of healing and grief? I always go back to my dad, and my dad's first job, which I still have a hard time thinking him with a hammer in his hand, but I digress, was to go to a house and take out the front bay window because you had to get the casket in the house. And so, has anybody ever been to an old house too? You go up the crickety stairs, you turn to go up the stairs, and when you go up the stairs and you turn, they've got trinkets as the turn there. What is that for? It's so they could get the casket and turn it and go up. They made houses around death and dying. You were born at home and you died at home. And then we institutionalized death. We did not want that at our homes anymore. And convalescent homes came in to play, which is a nursing home. And so death became ugly. It became something that we wanted to separate our lives from, instead of it being an integral part of our lives. When you think of it, I always talked about that growing up, farmers could tell you about a 10-mile range that they knew everybody in every house, and where they went to school, and where they worked, and the dinner table was a great place to talk. And so Mom made dinner, Dad would work, he'd come home, we had a nuclear family, and we talked about stuff. And we look at today and how much things have changed, is we have blended families. Some are here, some are there, and heck, we don't even have dinner anymore. I mean, my daughter has gone to sleepovers, and I'll say, "What'd you have for dinner last night?" "Captain Crunch." I'm like, Captain Crunch. I like it too, but it's amazing how we've grown so far from that experience of meals and talking, and now we've got cell phones, and talking is by texting, but it's not a conversation. It's a one-way. So along that way, death became ugly, and then funeral homes came into play, and that's where we started having visitations because they didn't want it at their homes anymore. And so it would be that you'd have 2 days of visitation and then the funeral, and then we went to 1 day of visitation and the funeral, and then we broke it up a little bit more and say, well, it was 3 to 5. The family would go home for dinner at 6 or at 5, and then come back at 6, and then 6 to 8 was another visitation. And then we went to 3 hours to 2 hours, and now we're just doing 1 hour priors, or we're doing a celebration of life. The rituals don't lie. We do rituals certain ways because it has a significance on your healing. Because I truly believe what we do in that first week with Pastor is paramount for you in the rest of your life to heal, period. And so there's certain things that we do that we know have positive consequences for your grief. So that's what happened is grief became something we wanted to keep at bay. And luckily now, if you think of it, hospice is starting to try to bring that back to that you could die at home. So they're trying to bring dignity back, which is a great thing. So yeah, there's been so many things that have changed over the years. I mean, I could go on and talk all day of certain things that have happened that would just make you shake your head. It's amazing. And sad at the same time.
Has there been any, as far as you know, study related to reconciling length with the ritual? I'm just thinking of a personal family example. When my aunt and uncle died 3 years ago, we still haven't had the funeral yet. My cousins are planning it whenever there's a reunion because cremation that's possible. And to me, it just seems like when and if this funeral does happen, it almost seems too late rather than, you understand what I'm saying? It just seems like why? And will grief set in for them more so there?
The question was brought that with COVID, funerals are now postponed indefinitely or later, and how does that affect the grief? Well, I can guarantee you the grief's still sitting there. And it's still smoldering, and it's getting some air, and it's starting to build up. Because when we don't process our feelings, that's what happens. And so we've done a lot of meaningful things behind the scenes that most people may not see with families, specifically having what we would call a private view or a burial. The thing, too, that when we bring it up, it almost comes off commercially, but seeing a body is important. And some people say, well, it's not for me. I don't like it. Nope, I never have. It's not for me. I just have never been that. Nope. And they won't even go towards that room. Well, if you were able to have a Dr. Phil there or somebody like that could break them down, it's because they're scared to death of it. It's not because that they're just not, that doesn't do anything for them. It's because they're scared. Seeing a body is part of that acceptance. My dad died 2 years ago. And when he took his last breath, I grabbed my phone because I got to call my brother Dan. 18 years ago? What is that? Am I going crazy? No, that's normal. I think the dear Lord gives us some of those mechanisms to soften it. You know, I was talking to somebody that was involved in an accident this couple days ago, and they said, I don't remember any of it. I said, well, that's called amnesia to event. It's kind of a response that you get, so you don't remember that traumatic time, because I'm sure it wasn't very healthy. And so, yeah, does anyone like to see a body? Does anyone like to cry? But it's healthy. There's a physiological, chemical imbalance that works when you have tears, and it goes down the back of your throat. That's scientific. That's not just making that up. How many billions of dollars did we spend at 9/11 to try to find a finger? Because they need that. It seems like when something is taken from you, whether it's traumatic or something, then we want to see them. But when they're there, it just is so hard. My grandma was dying, and they said, go say goodbye to her. And I got up there, and I couldn't talk. Why do we do that? Because we're so attuned to keep our emotions in check. What do we tell little kids that come up to us and they're crying? You pat them on the back and you say, shh, it's going to be okay. What are we telling them? Don't show emotion. We learn that from the very get-go. And then we learn through video games that you can get killed or kill somebody, and they just pop back up. So it's not real anyway. And so there's so many different angles on this that it's no wonder we're at where we're at today. We don't process our grief. We don't talk about it. And if you want to see any examples, watch the news every night because there's a mass shooting, right? Why? Because they're miserable. And if I can't have you, I want others to feel this pain because I can't live with it. And you kill other people because you're so damn miserable. They couldn't handle the loss of losing that girlfriend or whatever it was, so they're going to kill other people. That's what we're down to now. It's sad. So, going back to the connect with somebody and ask them those questions. What was it like? What was it like when you lost your grandson? What was it like when you saw the last breath? Those are powerful questions, but it's amazing when you see somebody and their eyes light up. Like, you care? Really, if you're going to ask the question, like, how are you doing? Mean it. Just mean it. But ask really emotional questions and see the response. They just want to talk. They just want it flows out of them. And you don't got to say a word. You can just sit there and say, wow, But don't ever tell anybody, don't feel that way. Even if, like my dad at the end, you go, well, you want to live anymore. Okay. I don't disagree with you, Dad. I get it. Whereas my sister would, stop talking like that, Dad. Well, that was just his feeling. He wasn't going to do anything. He couldn't do anything. But again, he was just trying to show his emotion, and then we tell him not to say it. Hindsight, you can go back and talk to all these people and have some of these conversations, because hindsight's always 20/20, but you are in a position here and watching that you can make with somebody. And there was always that poem that I thought was great, is leave the world a better place because you lived. Make somebody feel important, because that's all they want, especially when they're hurting. So.
Well, thank you very, very much, sir. We appreciate your time with us.
Yeah.
Anyone else have questions? We're not Facebook Live, we're actually on YouTube, so we can't have questions come to you.
Got it.
We should have thought about that. My apologies.
No. So.
The live audience or the actual audience here have questions for Dan?
I'll make one more statement on that too, then, is that, again, we did a 5-part series with a doctor about eating, a counselor about your feelings, a yoga person about what you can do with stretches and things like that. What other ones were there? There was a pastor talking about spiritual. So you can do yoga, you can meditate, you can take walks, you can talk to your pastor. Or Pastor John Hanson told me once, he said, do you like when your daughter calls you and talks to you about your problems? I'm like, what? And he goes, do you like it when she calls you and talks about her problems? I'm like, yeah, so does he. Give him a call. You're not alone. It's a touche. Touche.
And I was going to say too, in respect to the COVID grief, the same thing applies. Just because we can call and reach out to folks while they're still here. As you said, to the dead, they don't only realize they're dead yet. Or I don't know how you put it, and I'm not being very eloquent now, but we don't have to wait for people to be in grief because of the death. We can reach out to the COVID grief in the same format, connect.
Absolutely. We're a hurting community and we can help each other. Well, thank you so very much for this opportunity. And hopefully it helped.